I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximized Living. Aristotle once said, health is a matter of choice, not a mystery of chance. What you eat, how you exercise, how you think, structural care, and minimizing toxins all matter in building a healthy body. To help you make healthy choices, stay tuned for natural healthcare news coming up next.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural health care news today. So Dr. Pat, you might remember last time we did this, we talked about a study that said that alcohol causes 7 types of cancer, which was kind of scary because it said that there was actually no safe level of drinking. Even low to moderate consumption was seeing this. Well, there's another study now. The British Journal of Sports Medicine did say, however, that exercise may actually wipe out the risk of damage caused by drinking.
That's just how important exercise is. Imagine drink less and we'd be exercising, the benefits of that. Yeah, as I looked at that study, if there's high amount of drinking, it wouldn't wipe out men. It said for 20 drinks for women and 28 per men per week. Not per day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the exercise won't wipe out that kind of drinking. The concern was for those that are having 2 or 3 drinks a day, that it really increases the risk of cancer.
Yeah.
But if you exercise, it'll limit that cancer. So important, you know, we used to think wine may be good for your heart, but there's really no safe level of wine in these studies for preventing cancer.
So you definitely, but exercise is definitely the key for so many things. It keeps coming up again and again.
Yeah. And here's another study that talks about use it or lose it, a study showing that stopping exercise decreases brain blood flow. So they took athletes average between 50 and 80 years old, average 61, who are used to running like a 10K, 5 miles a day, 6 miles a day, and they measured a decreased blood flow to their brain within 10 days. Significant drop in blood flow to their hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that's really important in learning and memory. And so in 10 days without exercise, you start to have problems with it. These are the same organs that are affected, same tissues that are affected in Alzheimer's.
Wow, and yeah, in just a week and a half, you always hear how quickly that drops off. Some of your muscle, I think I've even heard too.
So the resting cerebral blood flow significantly decreased in 8 brain regions, including the left and right hippocampus, and part of the brain's default mode network deteriorates quickly. It's important with Alzheimer's.
Well, that's crazy. So it's definitely worthy of continuing to exercise. You may want to try one of our T3 Max T3 workouts, because these only take 12 minutes if you're running short on time, rather than have something like this happen.
Exactly. It just shows that you use it or you lose it if you're not doing it consistently. So really the best exercise recommendation, do something with Max T3 5-6 times a week, or just get out and walk. And if you can't walk, ride a bike. If you can't ride a bike, use a treadmill, or go and get to a pool and just walk with the buoyancy of the pool. If you're confined to a wheelchair, just get your body moving. Do a little shadow boxing if you can, or tap your feet in a pattern. Anything to get motion in the body to stimulate the brain function. And brain health comes from motion, not from doing crossword puzzles as much, but it comes from motion.
So definitely keep moving. Well, another article that struck us too was on the antibacterial soaps. One of the ingredients, triclosan, is going to be gone from store shelves soon. The Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, announced a rule that it's no longer considering those ingredients safe and effective in soaps sold to customers. Right,
that it tends to have hormone changes affecting the body's hormone levels, and it's also antibacterial, so it's even in toothpaste. So when you use toothpaste, you're actually killing some of your probiotics, is the concern.
Yikes.
But there's arguments on both sides of that, you know, that's why it's called controversial. So it's not going to be, triclosan won't be in soaps anymore. They're switching to other ingredients, and those will probably have some trouble too. The problem is there's no good research saying that these chemicals are any better than just plain soap and water.
Yeah, it seems like you're better off just sticking with the basics. Well, stay with us. We have more natural health care news right after this. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural health care news today. One of the articles we found here was CBS News actually reported that ultra-processed foods are a huge chunk of the American diet. It says more than half of all calories consumed in the U.S. come from ultra-processed foods. Those are those that contain tons of these manufactured ingredients that aren't, you know, used when you're cooking from scratch. Natural and artificial flavors, it says, or colors, sweeteners, preservatives, other additives. More than half of calories consumed in the U.S.
Yeah, and those are not healthy for us necessarily. We can tolerate some. Our body's good at detoxifying, but why overload it? And plus, for many people, it upsets their digestion. They'll get more bloating or gas or fatigue when they eat foods like that. They just don't cleanse their body as well, and they congest and cause bloating and discomfort, and people are often sensitive to the additives. So simpler ingredients make a huge difference. But 50% of the calories coming from ultra-processed foods, I think it would a whole lot better if we kept it down like 5 or 10% max. You know, some people say, well, you can't be perfect. Well, you're right. You can't really be perfect, but why put something knowingly artificial in your body if you can have something that actually tastes better into your body and better for you at the same time, and probably less expensive.
Yes, exactly.
So processed foods is a huge thing, and you know, a friend of mine said once, Dr. Chestnut said people ask him how to read labels, and he said, simple. If it has the label, don't eat it. So cleaning up those foods makes a big difference.
Yes, yeah.
Well, next, here's an interesting one. You know, we've had the low-fat diet craze, if you will, for many, many years, but the science behind it isn't that strong.
Really?
In fact, here's a Harvard scientist urged people to stop drinking low-fat milk. Now, I'm not a big fan of dairy, but if it's grass-fed, I think it's a whole lot better. But here's David Ludwig is urging people to stop the low-fat milk and drink whole-fat milk. So this may be controversial for you, but he says you'll have less obesity, less heart problems, because the full-fat milk has phthalic acid and conjugated linoleic acid in it, all things that help you with your heart. It has better vitamins, retinol and vitamin K in the full-fat milk. And when it comes to calcium, Dr. Ludwig says that both low-fat and regular fat milk will give you calcium, but there are those in the natural circles who say low-fat, that calcium from milk isn't absorbed as well as calcium from broccoli or spinach or cauliflower. So other sources may be better. And of course, supplementing calcium is there's certain forms that just aren't well absorbed, so you have to be cautious with that. And calcium-magnesium ratios are important. So, but that's quite a fascinating article to come out now and start saying full-fat milk is better for you.
Yeah, it's just such a pendulum swing to the other side. Now all of a sudden we're talking full-fat, not just, you know.
Well, what happened, I think, you know, is that the low-fat diet craze caused people to get imbalanced foods in their body, and then they start replacing the calories that were healthy fats in their body that lasted longer, made them feel more satiated. Replace that with carbohydrates, and that's what really has led the obesity epidemic. And with 2 out of 3 Americans being overweight and not everyone recognizing that they're actually overweight, it's a problem. 1 in 3 Americans are considered obese, and obesity can take up to 10 years out of your life.
Wow, that's a lot for 1/3 of Americans. Speaking of diet, the Mediterranean diet is actually better for your heart than taking statins. Get into this a little bit before the break, but the Mediterranean diet, again, is a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, nuts, whole grains, and olive oil, and it's better than actually being put on drugs, these statins. This study found that The survival of heart patients found it cut the chances of having an early death by 37%. This is the Mediterranean diet. So we'll have more after this, after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking about natural health care news today. And before the break, we just started talking a little bit about the Mediterranean diet. That's the diet, again, rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, nuts, whole grains, and olive oil. This study here actually found that it's better for you than statins at reducing the risk of an early death for people. They found that statins cuts mortality by about 18%, whereas the Mediterranean diet was increasing the survival of heart patients. It was found that it cut the chances of an early death by 37%.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And statins are widely prescribed and quite controversial. There are a number of medical doctors even who don't like to use them because of potential side effects and potentially not all that effective. So this is something, you know, to read more about and study and talk with your doctor about, but certainly do the things that are healthy for your diet. Get your movement, eat right. I would much rather eat right and exercise more than to take a statin if it was for myself. Mm-hmm. Again, controversial, but yet highly marketed, and that becomes a concern.
Yeah, it's definitely concerning. Yeah, but it's so easy to, you know, to eat well, and it tastes good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So next, let's talk about the best sources of probiotics. Everyone's heard how we have more probiotics. We have 75–80% of our immune system is in our gut. And
Wow.
we're so disrupted in our immune system from antibiotics, from poor quality foods, lack of fiber that feeds the normal intestinal flora, as they're called, and high sugar diets, and that really upsets, and it will promote certain bacteria like Candida albicans will be promoted. So we get often imbalanced in our digestive tract. So getting more probiotics in you is really helpful, especially yogurt is a good thing. And I particularly like a brand called Noosa, N-O-O-S-A. And it has like 5 different probiotics in it. So it's nice because there are 10 or 20 major ones in your intestine, but up to like 100 different bacteria types in your body. So the best sources of probiotics, you don't want to just take it from a supplement. It's good to take supplements, I believe, probiotic, one of the essentials, one of our 5 essentials.
Right.
But there's also other sources of probiotics. So one of those, of course, is yogurt. We just talked about that. Get one with many different types of bacteria in it, lactobacillus cultures. Kefir is like a liquid yogurt. That's in many stores now.
Okay, yeah, I have seen
And
it
you
now
get
and
that
again.
flavored with fruit if it doesn't quite taste right to you. But watch the sugar content in those. All right. And then kombucha. Most people haven't had it. I've had it. It's pretty sour.
Is it?
But it's an acquired taste. Let's put it that way. But that is a high source of. Make sure it's raw kombucha. Because it's much better for you because you can't process this stuff. You can't pasteurize it or you kill it.
Okay.
These are live bacteria. So sauerkraut is a good one. So I have to laugh when I went to the Bratfest. I had more sauerkraut than I did brat. So sauerkraut's a really good fermented source. Now, most people cringe when they think of sauerkraut.
Right.
But I'm just telling you, it's one of the good things. And another is kimchi is a cabbage-based fermented source for probiotics. Tempeh and miso paste are also things that can be added. So your culture in your intestines really matters.
Yeah, and that's a good way to do it. You can just eat that if you can develop a taste for some of these things,
Yes.
like Dr. Pat sauerkraut. Well, speaking of developing a taste, sucralose, Splenda, the Center for Science in the Public Interest has formally recommended that consumers avoid sucralose altogether. It's really becoming a big issue. Swiss mice who were fed significant amounts of sucralose throughout their lives developed malignant blood cancers like leukemia, and those fed sucralose didn't.
Not fed sucralose, yeah.
Yeah, not fed sucralose
That's
didn't.
still a mouse study, but it's enough to get your attention.
Yeah.
So, I'd rather have a little sugar than all the artificial stuff, but keep it down because sugar is inflammatory.
Well, we have to go to break, but we'll have more on that right after this. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking natural health care news today. Before the break, we just started talking about sucralose, also known as Splenda. The Center for Science and the Public Interest formally recommended that consumers avoid sucralose altogether. So it can be dangerous for you from the looks of it here. What are some of the sweeteners that maybe you'd recommend people switch to? Just natural sugar?
Possibly some natural sugar, but stevia works well for many. You can get liquid organic stevia and put a couple drops